This is The Search for the Sound. I'm Ross Holmes,
My name is Jason Anick.
and today we're welcoming our first guest on this series, Grammy-nominated artist and IBMA Fiddle Player of the Year, Deanie Richardson.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
We're so excited you're here. This is a major honor for us, and we've been fans of your fiddle playing for way too long to even remember it. So it's a treat to talk fiddles and all of our interests. But before we launch in, let's listen to some of your playing. You got a new single out, Walking in My Sleep. Let's listen. It's amazing playing, Deanie. And I guess before we get going, tell us about this single and the song and the project.
Well, this is my second solo project out in the last little bit. I did one when I was 12 years old, but those are contest tunes. You're heavy in the Texas style contest fiddling. So that was the last solo record I did until 2018. I released a record, and that record was kind of just a walk through my entire career, so to speak. I featured some bluegrass stuff, some Irish stuff, some Patty Loveless was on the record. Just everything I've done throughout my career is kind of featured on that record. So this record, I wanted to pay respect to sort of the way I grew up with my brother going to square dances. He's a dancer. He's a clogger. He dances on the Grand Ole Opry. He's been dancing there since he was 15. And I wanted to just go back to he and I growing up together and around Kingston Springs and which is just outside of Nashville. And we used to go to these square dances Saturday night, when we weren't at a fiddle contest or something, we were at a square dance. And if I wasn't fiddling, I was hearing some old time fiddler up there just sawing these old square dance tunes, and everybody would circle up, and the caller would start calling these dances, and it was just amazing, guys, to hear those rhythms. You get 50 people on a dance floor. This was a big dance floor. You get 50 people, that's 100 legs, and when they hit that down and those feet, 1, 2, 3, 4, bum, da 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 da, just it is like the coolest sound against that fiddle, that you can imagine, and the power behind those feet. So I grew up playing for a lot of dancers, and I didn't want any singing. All the fiddle records lately, mine included, my last one had singing on it, guest, and just wanted to go back and do an old school fiddle record. So we did that. We went back and cut tunes I played with my grandfather, I grew up hearing, and just just tunes that I love, and I thought had that good dance beat, and it's very percussive. It's I hear my brother's feet in my head all the time. Just when I'm playing, I can hear his, he's an incredible dancer, so I can hear his feet. He had this thing he used to say when he was little. He would dance around. He pretty much danced the deck off the back of our house. So he would dance in the Kroger. He would dance in the Walmart. He would dance. He was always dancing. So I hear these rhythms. So when I'm playing, even he and I did a tune on my last record, Lost Indian. I'm hearing his. I'm hearing his percussive things happening in my head, So this record is very percussive, and it's just me going back and tributing, paying tribute to how he and I grew up together doing those dances. And this first single is an Arthur Smith tune, Walking in My Sleep. My grandfather played it, and I don't remember hearing it at the square dances, but I heard Laurie Lewis do this tune on XM radio, and I was like, oh, wow, that's just killer. And I haven't thought of that tune in a long time, so I went home and I just woodshedded that tune and thought, wow, it's kind of got that same beat. It could totally be a square dance tune. So started playing it at the Grand Ole Opry with my brother, and just thought it's got to be on this record. So anyway, that's the tune and the record, and I'm going to call it Circle Up, which is what they say, when they start the dance. So
I love it, and you're dancing on that fiddle as well, so that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's you guys are incredible players, so it's fun to just experiment with all those different rhythms, and especially when you're hearing those taps in your head like I hear them. So.
Yeah, it makes so much sense too when I hear you're playing, because it's so rhythmically driven and impeccably just like perfect, and has like a undeniable pocket as well, a groove, and I think those are things I would assume, like, growing up with your brother and, always hearing that in your head and continuing to hear it even when you're not playing. I mean, when you are playing and when you're not playing, it's just like became part of you. And that's awesome. That's really cool. I don't think a lot of people have a similar experience, having dance be such an important part of their upbringing.
Yeah, it was, he was always in a square dance group or just dancing. So, I grew up with Marcia Campbell. I don't know if you guys know Marcia, but he and my brother, or she and my brother, were dance partners through their entire life. We were practically neighbors. So we all grew up together. So I had so many dancer friends growing up, and it was just a huge part of my learning to play. And when we do these fiddle contests, these local fiddle contests around here, they have a fiddle category, a banjo category, a guitar category, and then they also have a lot of dancing categories. So I was always the one that got roped into playing for these dancers, and it was like Sally Gooden for 4 solid hours trying to get through these dance categories, and to the point that I don't play Sally Gooden anymore.
I totally found growing up in Texas that you either were a dancer on the dance floor or you were fiddler up on the stage.
Exactly.
And I can't dance to save my life, so I'll stick with the fiddling on stage.
That's right. You grew up around some dancing for sure. Yeah.
Totally.
Well, awesome. So you have such an incredible sound, and a big part of this series is kind of honing in on the instrument and the sound that that we all have in our head, and how it's a marriage between the instrument and what we're trying to achieve and what our voice is. So we'd love to dive into a few things. You got your instrument there. Before we talk about that specific instrument, do you have other like early memories of hearing the fiddle, and do you remember like being drawn to it at an early age?
Yeah, I grew up, like I said, going to local dances around here, but both my grandfathers played music, mandolins, guitars, fiddles. My dad plays guitar. So I grew up around lots of music. And there were some local fiddlers in this area that, played at those square dances that I remember, holding their fiddles way down here and doing everything that we teach not to do. But, it was very contagious. It was hearing those sounds and just seeing everybody having all this fun. And they said I was a little kid and out on the dance floor just, eating it all up as a kid. I don't remember that, but I do remember those old guys playing those fiddles in this area. And there was one guy, this is a funny story, guys. There was a guy they called him Pokey Beck around here. And Pokey used to you know, he'd have some spit or snuff or something dripping down his, and he'd grab that fiddle and he'd hit the Take Me Back to Tulsa. And that is like one of my greatest memories. I'm going to cry talking about it because Pokey Beck and the Take Me Back to Tulsa was like, that was the deal around here. And I'll never forget when I started playing, Pokey came up to the house and he grabs my fiddle. And I was like, oh shit. And he grabs my fiddle and he's going to tune it. He starts turning on the pegs. I was like, oh my gosh. But anyway, those are just great memories of me growing up and my first memories of hearing fiddlers, you know, just local guys here. But I kind of got addicted to, I didn't grow up listening to Kenny Baker and all the traditional guys. I grew up Mark O'Connor obsessed. I just loved his sound. I loved his tone. I loved everything about his playing growing up as a kid, and pretty much followed him around. He probably thinks to this day I'm some crazy kid, but I was really, that was a turning point for me, hearing him acoustically and hearing him plugged in, because I loved back then, you know, this was the 80s, mid to late 80s, and he was playing with, you know, Jerry and Douglas and Sam Bush, and I loved that sound that he was getting. And I went and found the guy that made his preamp. I bought me one of those preamps, you know. It was like, I gotta, because at that point I was on the road playing country music, so I want that sound. That's how I want my fiddle to sound plugged in. I don't think I ever really achieved what he was doing, but that's my first memory of, oh, I want that sound, you know. So yeah.
Fantastic.
What was the first fiddle that you acquired or borrowed or lent that really just made you want to just not put it down? You just couldn't stop playing.
Well, I there's a fiddle that's in my family. It's an old Hoff that my grandfather gave me, and it was his great-great-grandfather. So that makes it my great-great-great-great-grandfather's. So it's been in my family a long time. It's an old German Hoff. Not a great sounding fiddle, but at the time, you know, for me, that was the schniz. It was in my family forever. And it was just a big deal. It was even too big for me. It was a full size, and I was trying to play it. But that's the first, you know, old fiddle that I got. And then from there, I have this great story about Randy Howard, who's one of my mega heroes, guys. So Randy was at this fiddle contest in Clarksville, Tennessee, and he had this Newkirken fiddle that, and it has a small neck. It's got this really tiny, skinny neck on it. So he wanted to sell this fiddle. He's at this fiddle contest, and he and I were big pals, and he always used to show me stuff, and he lets me play this fiddle all day. So I'm just falling in love with this fiddle because my hands are small. I love that little skinny neck. And that day, I beat Randy in this fiddle contest, which, you know, no way. No one ever beat Randy in a fiddle contest. But I had some really, really good friends judging who thought I was very cute. I was 16 years old, you know, and they were just friends and fans and whatever. But I beat Randy that day, and I ended up signing my check over to Randy that I won, the $1,500 check. I signed it over to Randy and took the fiddle home. So he got the check anyway. And I go home with this Newkirken and still have that fiddle this day. I love that fiddle. It's got a great sound. It's, you know, that neck I still love. It's got this wooden inlay that looks like an eyeball on the neck. And it's about to need a new neck, but I'm torn about getting rid of that eyeball on that neck. So I always called it the Eye of Randy. It's watching over me, but it's a good fiddle, you know. It's got a nice woody tone, And I toured with that fiddle with Holly Dunn and Patty Loveless, and even had it out with Vince Gill. So it's a great instrument. I still use it out at the Opry, and it's got a pickup on it, so I keep that one plugged in. And then from there I got this French fiddle. I don't know what it is. It's just one of those that's got the little inlay thing all around it, sort of red colored. I have no idea what that is, but it's got a nice mellow woody tone. I don't play it as much anymore, but this by far is the baddest of the baddest. So but I would say that Randy Howard fiddle was the first one that really I felt like, oh yeah, this is what I'm doing right here.
Oh, I love
It really
that.
makes such a difference when you find as a child, as a teenager, an instrument that just inspires you. It doesn't, at that point, you don't care about the maker, you don't care about its value. It's just something that just keeps you intrigued and keeps you picking it up over and over. And that's so important. So many kids out there aren't fortunate enough to play on great instruments. School rental instruments can be set up poorly, and that ruins the experience. But
it's awful.
It is. But you were in such a location and a situation to be around these amazing players and to hear their instruments and play them.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. I was talking about that today because I don't know if you guys teach, but I do a lot of teaching, and it's such an important thing for them to have a decent instrument to learn to play on, because if it's so hard to pull a tone out of something that's, you're just working harder than you really have to work. Especially as a young kid with action on a fiddle that's, so high they can't even play it.
Yeah, and of course, finding the intonation, and that's going to be how much it rings, and the setup and how it feels. And then of course, if you're not inspired to want to practice on it because it's creating, a pleasant sound, it's tough to kind of get them inspired in that regard. Yeah, no, it's a tough situation.
It is, and it's money. I get that. I had one recently that came to me and, we bought this on eBay and we only paid $50 for it. Like, well, you might have overpaid. Because it was so bad. I mean, I could stick my entire hand up under the strings up here.
No.
And the kid didn't last a month. It was just, there's no way you can really do that. So it's hard to explain to people that aren't players how important that is.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of great instruments, let's talk about the one you got in your hand. This is been your main axe for a little bit.
Yeah, I bought this fiddle back in, I think, 2006 or 7. I was fortunate enough and blessed enough to get to work with Vince Gill, and it was at a time when he was touring with the 16-piece band. We were out supporting his. It was like a 4-pack CD set thing that he released, and anyway, he took a bluegrass band out, and I played on his country stuff, and then he took this bluegrass band, which was Charlie Cushman, myself, and Jeff White, and we did a bluegrass set in the middle of this show. So I was playing that Randy Howard fiddle through that, and then we went home for a few days, and we'd already been out for a little while, so I had a little Vince Gill money in the bank account, and went over to the violin shop to buy a new case for that tour. And Fred over there at the violin shop in Nashville says, "Deanie, you got to check this thing out. I just got it in." And one of the guys at the symphony had it. And I played it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I wish I hadn't done that, because you can't stop thinking about it. This thing plays itself. I just don't have to work that hard. So, and it's an 1880 Colin Mezzin. And is that how you say that? Mezzin or Mezzin? Anybody know?
I mean, people say Mezzin or Maison or.
Yeah. Oh, I like
that. If you have a scarf, you're allowed to say Maison.
Maison. Yeah. Okay. I like that. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah.
it's an 1880, and I went home. That was a Friday, I believe, and I went home and I just couldn't stop thinking about it all weekend. So I called him up on Monday. I had a session, and I said, "Fred, would you let me play this thing at the session day?" He's like, "Oh yeah, you can come get it and take it and play it." So I went and picked it up, and it just was the easiest session I've ever done. It mics so well, and so I went back and I never paid that much for instruments, so I wrote him all of my Vinskill money, the check for all my Vinskill money, and went and bought this fiddle. So I have not regretted it, man. I would be lost without this instrument. I really would. I feel like it's just a piece of me now. I don't even go on vacation without this thing. Whether I play it or not, it just has to go with me. I don't want it out of my sight. It just is a perfect fit. And when you find that instrument, like you were saying, Ross, that's the perfect fit. It's just you're so connected to it. I feel so just personally connected to this fiddle, and I'm just amazed at whose hands have touched it in 140 years and how it got to me. So every time I play it, I just feel this vibration in my gut, and I think about all those people brought it here, and they helped make it what it is right now, and how great it sounds and plays. It plays so good, guys. It's just, I'm serious. It's just one of those things that the second I picked it up and pulled that bow across it, I was like, oh my gosh, I've never just really known anything like this. It's the perfect fit for me. I don't feel like I ever need to find another fiddle. I do think I would love at some point maybe a better fiddle for electric purposes. But because you're even plugged in, you're only as good as your fiddle, I guess. But I would love to have something like this plugged in. I can't bear to put a pickup on it for some reason. I can't do it. So
Yeah, it can change the sound a bit. You got something clamped on there. Or, yeah, in an ideal world, I think having a pickup fiddle and a straight acoustic fiddle is nice. I want to mention actually one of I have since parted with this violin, but it's one of the most important violins of my life to date. It was a 1882 Kalmazan.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, yeah. And it took me from like the year I graduated college, I got it, and it's on 3 or 4 of my records. It's
sweet.
It was an incredible violin, and I've played a lot of Kalamazans, and there's some variance. He was consistently good, especially around that time period, the 1880 to like there's like a 10-20 year period where it's like the most sought after. He was consistently good, but he also modeled Guarneris, he modeled Strads, there was some variation. This was a Strad model, and yeah, no, it was very huge.
Did it have the binding and all of the
like the line?
Yeah,
it was
color
so,
the edges,
yeah, there was it was worn out. It had been sweated on so much. Beautifully flamed back. Let's see the back on that. I bet the flame is nice. Yeah, he one piece back too. One piece.
Yeah, and it's so light. It's like one of those, you can tell something's great when you pick it up, and it's so light.
Absolutely, yeah. And so, like, it's amazing how something so light can be just insanely powerful and
so big. Yeah.
I ended up 2 years ago selling my Kalmazan, and it's now went to another great player. And yes, when we talk about the journey, it was really hard because I was really attached to that fiddle.
Yeah.
But I ended up kind of going a different route, and you know, and that's exciting as well. But I love hearing the stories of you know, when you snag a fiddle like that, and you knew right away, right? You
Yeah.
know, you picked it up, you played a few notes. Do you have like what's the first thing you do when you pick up a fiddle? Like when you're like, is there?
That's a good question. I'm usually in G,
Just
probably.
getting a couple classics.
Yes,
Mm,
dirty, man. It's just
yeah.
dirty.
Yeah, so you're like, okay, let me see if the voice I'm trying, basically the sound that you wanted, your singing voice comes through in that instrument,
Yeah,
and it
yeah.
just like amplifies it, which is cool.
Hmm.
So that's awesome.
And you know, I've tried uh, some heliocore strings, but I really like these super flexible, these tomestics on this for bluegrass purposes, which is mostly what I do. You know, I love that grit at the front, you know. I just love that grittiness of that with these strings. It's not like bright or metallic. It's just a nice, real, just bite that happens with these strings. So I'm experimenting with the E. I don't know. What are you guys using for an E?
Oh man, don't get us started.
Well, I have a very quick answer for my E string, and I hunted E's for the better part of 15 years and have wound up going back to one of the cheapest E strings. It's a Goldbricot, the same one that Heifetz used. And it's bitey, it's loud, it's clear all the way up. I love that you're our first guest and that you play a French fiddle, because so many fiddle players in particular play French fiddles. Jason's a French fiddle guy. My main fiddle is a French fiddle. So many of these cats in town and around the scene are French fiddle players. Yeah. Yeah. And there is a kind of a consistent tone found in these French instruments. So with the low archings and the broader shoulders, there's that dark, powerful, very Frenchish sound, and finding
it's
that
clear and crisp too, you know.
totally, yeah. But finding that set of strings that allows each of those regions on the instrument to really explode with color it's a quest. But I mean, everything that you've shared about this, the sound of your fiddle from your perspective as well as us listening, it sounds like you're dialed in.
Yeah, well, this is a Westminster E that Brian suggested I try, and I'm liking it so far. I was using those Larson E's and just wanted to experiment, see if I could find something.
I think the Westminster, they have like a heavier gauge, so it's kind of a thicker, more powerful. I have like probably 10 different types of E's in my string right now. Right now I think I have a Hill E on there, but yeah, no, it changes.
Yeah, it's a tough call, isn't it?
Yeah. But I like so I use the Peter Infeld Tomastic strings, and then kind of sometimes I use the E that comes with that. Sometimes I'm experimenting. Sometimes it's whatever is around if I break something.
Right. Yeah, there's that. Right.
Yeah.
So as you were progressing through your career, and I mean, you've mentioned some of the artists that you've toured with and recorded with, Vince and Patty, and of course Bob Seger, and my favorite on your list, your roster of artists, is your time that you spent with the Chieftains. Yes. And I know it's a little bit of a tangent away from kind of talking about fiddles, but I'm curious about your time with the Chieftains, because Celtic players have a very specific sound with their fiddles, and you're a bluegrass player playing Celtic music, and there's this relationship naturally between the cultures and the genres. But how do you, as a player with your instruments and the combination of fiddle and bow and your licks and lines that you hear, how does this combination represent, I guess, the sounds that you heard of your heroes and your influences, not just in bluegrass, but outside the genres as well?
Well, that was an interesting time with the Chieftains. Let me say that, because I am a bluegrasser, and the tones I dig now, are Kenny Baker, I love that Kenny Baker tone. That I grew up with the progressive Mark O'Connor stuff, but now I'm straight up Kenny Baker, Art Stamper. Those guys are kind of rocking me right now. But when I started with the Chieftains, my knowledge of the Chieftains was Sean Keane, who fabulous player. And I love Sean's tone, but Sean wasn't there, which is why I was there. So when I stepped into that seat, I was, I really want to hang out with Sean Keane, and but he wasn't around. So a Canadian fiddler, John Pulatsky, I don't know if you guys know John, he was the fiddler, and I sat next to him. And I don't know if you guys are like this, but I kind of become a chameleon. kind of when I hear something every single night, I kind of start emulating that without even being aware of it. So in that setting, I found myself playing with a bouncier bow, playing a little scratchier, for lack of a better word, because those Canadian fiddlers up in the valley up there, John carrying on all that, stuff is it's percussive, it's real bouncy. Plus John's a dancer, so he does the Ottawa Valley, the step dancing. So I found myself, he uses a really tight bow, and I found myself yearning to play like that, with that, to find that tone he was getting there. And that became something I did for 5 years. So that was really every night, just hearing that sound in my ear. And I wasn't an Irish fiddler. I didn't grow up doing Irish fiddling. I got that gig because Jeff White was playing with the Chieftains, and the Chieftains had heard me play with Vince. And when Sean decided to leave for a bit, they wanted a bluegrass fiddler. They didn't want another Irish fiddler. So they wanted to come over here and tour their thing. Every year they did this, big tour around St. Patrick's Day, and they wanted to showcase how the bluegrass and the Irish fiddling were so connected. So my job was, and I was so nervous, guys, about filling that spot because I wasn't an Irish fiddler. So I'm in there trying to learn my ornament, and he's just like, just play. Just play, don't worry about it. So I literally locked myself in a room for 6 weeks, and all I had was a live tape. All they sent over was a live tape. So I'm sitting there trying to learn these melodies of these tunes and catch some of these ornaments. But when I got there, he's just like, just play, we just want you to do what you do. And I was so schooled and learned so much just being on stage with those guys every night till you start, the lilt starts catching on, and the percussiveness of John's playing starts catching on. So I find myself doing that a lot. I don't know if that answers your question, but in any situation I'm in, if I'm around other fiddlers or other great players, I just instinctively start sucking in what they're doing, and then that starts spitting itself back out in what I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a beautiful thing. But when I left that situation, I went back to bluegrass, and it was like, hold on, that's a different ballgame. So that was interesting.
Well, and having the fiddle that you're so intimately close with that can convey those things that you're hearing. I've certainly had fiddles in the past that I wanted to play other genres on, but it just didn't work. It just didn't work. I had to have another fiddle to do it. So the fact that your single instrument accomplishes everything that you want it to, that's a rare gift.
Yeah, I got a great story about tone, guys. If we're talking about sound, but this fiddle, every night with the Chieftains, that's a fiddler's dream gig. It's just fiddle tunes and then beer. It's a dream gig. So we just played fiddle tunes all night, and then we went to the bar. So it's one night in particular, every night I got to do a solo. So every night I got to step out on the front of the stage. Jeff White came with me and we played 2 fiddle tunes. I would usually do a waltz just to showcase. He would talk about bluegrass, so something to showcase what I do. So I would play a waltz, or, you know, black and white rag, or I don't know, whatever I played. But we were at Royal Albert Music Hall in London, and I stepped out on the front, and this fiddle just completely engulfed that entire room. And it's a massive room. I don't know if you've ever been in that room, but it was silent. And I remember I got chills thinking about it. And there's a YouTube clip of this somewhere where I just, and it just, I was like, holy crap. And that moment, you know, nothing else in the world exists except you and that fiddle and all of that space. And I made sure that fiddle went in every little hole of that whole hall, you know, and that is just a memory I'll never forget, that opening few notes of Kentucky Waltz in that Royal Albert Hall.
It's one of those moments where the stars align, you know.
Yeah.
You're feeling good, you're with a fantastic band in an amazing acoustic space, legendary space, you know, a fiddle you love, the sound that you're trying to create is coming out, and
and you settle into it, you know. It's like, holy I just want every second of this to last. So you just really settle into just that, being completely present in that tone and that sound, you know. It's pretty amazing. Yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
What a story, man. That's I get chills hearing players talk about those very special memories, because in each of our journeys, each of our careers, we're all very fortunate that we've had some very high moments, and then we've all played the run of the mill crappy bar gigs and, you know, cigarette smoke filled clubs and the whole thing. But yet the thing that prevails is our interest, our love of the music and the instrument that we hold in our hands.
Yes.
And speak to these people every night.
Right.
Well, when it's not a pandemic.
Indeed.
But I find during pandemic, I'm spending a lot more time just playing around with it, you know, not just working all the time, and playing just to hear it, you know, just to hear the sound of it. So that's been a pretty cool thing about the pandemic.
Well, awesome. I think we gotta wrap it up, but it's been amazing chatting with you.
Well, thanks for having me, fellas. This is very cool. I look forward to watching more of what you're doing. Appreciate you having me on.
We're so grateful that you joined us for this first interview episode of The Search for the Sound, and we're honored that you're here. We'll put down in the section below links to your website and where to find your single. And do you have any plans to be back out on the road in 2021 where people can hear you?
I hope so. I mean, you know, I'm with the band Sister Sadie, and the band, you know, we were doing so well, and then a pandemic.
I'm going to interrupt you, because not just doing so well, you were vocal group and entertainer of the year for IBMA, first all-female band. That's amazing.
Well,
plus fiddle player of the year, and the other one that you took home with Becky Bueller. You've just been cleaning house on awards.
It was a good year to not do shit. So yeah, it was a good year, and I hope we're trying to get some dates booked for later in the year. So hopefully we'll get back out there. I'm itching to play. I don't know about you guys, but
oh yes,
I'm itching to play.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So bad. Well, thank you for joining us. This has been so special, and we're so grateful to you, Deanie Richardson, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.